Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Your host, Caroline, here. And today we have a very special guest, Bea Chan. And just to give you a little bit of her background. So, after 7 years of an unfulfilling corporate career, I can relate, Bea quit her job, bought a one-way ticket to Asia, and embraced the digital nomad lifestyle. Her journey from Canada to Thailand to Mexico led her to sacred plant medicine. Wanting to elevate the feminine presence and invite more diversity into the psychedelic space, Bea collided with her co-founder, Dana Harvey, at just the right time to bring Sisters in Psychedelics to life. Welcome to the podcast, Bea.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and I love your story. I am jealous of your digital nomad lifestyle. I definitely did corporate, but then what I did is became a raft guide in Colorado as
That's
my
pretty
as my little
cool.
gap. Yeah. But I wanted to start with talking about Sisters in Psychedelics. So can you share a little bit more about what is the mission of this organization and like how did it become this brainchild that you guys created?
Definitely. So you just cut out there for a quick second. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. My question is I wanted to start with the Sisters in Psychedelics and just wanted to know more about like how did this idea come to be? What is your mission right now? Give us a little bit more about this organization.
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of fun telling our origin story, which is something that me and Dana tag team together when we're on meetings, but I'll try to do it myself this time. So essentially, as I was in Thailand, I was actually introduced to psychedelics at that time. It was my first time taking MDMA and Thai mushrooms. And so as I had the flexibility to go to different countries and really just kind of sit with medicine in different places of the world, COVID brought me back home. When I was back home, I really wanted to connect with, like-minded people so I can share with, talk to, and express, and also just witness other people's healing journeys without, being judged, without having that kind of um, I guess like explanation that you need to with people who don't quite get it. And so I was looking for specifically a women focused organization and couldn't find one. Found Dana instead. And we were both like, we're looking for the same thing. It doesn't seem like it's out there, not in Vancouver, anyways. So why don't we just throw something up on Meetup and see what happens? So last November, 2021, mid November, we had about 15 women, all random strangers, come over to my house for a potluck dinner as we shared our healing stories of transformation. And we laughed and cried the whole entire night. And from that night, I think we realized, hey, we're onto something. This is kind of special. Let's see what happens. And fast forward, how long has it been now? Like 9 months or so? Enough to give birth to a child. 9 months, and we have weekly programming. So we started the first women's only integration circle here in Vancouver. We rebranded from Vancouver Women in Psychedelics and to Sisters in Psychedelics because we recognize that there are more women than just in Vancouver that need that kind of safe space to go to. And since we rebranded, we've definitely seen people from like Spain, France, London, UK, Costa Rica, Mexico, Guatemala was our latest one actually, and all
Oh.
over the US, all over Canada. I think a few from like Asia as well, just joining in. And that's just testament to how we don't already, or they don't already have that space in their local city and they're looking for something to join on a virtual basis. And so we started hosting BIPOC sharing circles for moms, because they are actually the one of the most like the biggest population to be on antidepressants and SSRIs. So introducing them to microdosing and what does that mean, and just having them, giving them that safe place to kind of air out their concerns, because I'm far from being a mom, so not a mom myself, but really understanding, wow, they have a separate set of concerns. Like, if they're microdosing for their mental health, they're also thinking about, if somebody finds out about this, like my neighbor or something, and they call the authorities, would my kids be taken? Like that's definitely not something that I even thought about, as a single female. So I'm like, wow, this is so needed to have a place for them. Um, all the way to a sharing circle for psychedelic professionals working within the space, and more programming to be had here in the fall. And the biggest one yet is our inaugural Sisters in Psychedelics Summit that's happening on September 10th. We're super, super, super excited. Had I known there was so much work to be done to pull something off of this magnitude, I may not have done it. But it's been super fun so far. So it's a 1-day event. We have 34 female powerhouse speakers. It's a fast and fluid type of a style that we're going to have. And we have people talking about sex and intimacy, to money trauma, to transformation stories, to everything else in between. So it's going to be a day of fun, and the after party is not to be missed. We're also celebrating the full moon. It's a harvest moon on that night, with a lot of entertainers, from Aerial Silk to a multidisciplinary artist doing live song and guitar, to live DJ sets, to psychic medium group readings, to singing bowl journeys and whatnot. So like the whole gambit.
Wow. That sounds amazing.
Right.
I wish I was in Vancouver, but you guys have a virtual option too, right?
Yes, we
Yeah.
have a free live stream option for everyone around the world to join in on, just for the summit itself, not for the after party, just because, that might get a bit hairy to, Zoom people in. But yeah, definitely open to spreading the wisdom of all these amazing females who, to be honest, it's like looking at the other conferences or podcast media outlets and whatnot, like the male to female ratio that we're seeing on average is 8-1. And our summit is really a response to that, and really just platforming and showcasing all the females that are doing amazing, amazing work in the industry, specifically in Canada, in Vancouver, in BC, because I do like to say that we are the psychedelic capital of Canada here. We're a lot more free in the things that we can partake in. And so, yeah, acknowledging and recognizing the women who may not have gotten that for all the work that they've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think you brought up a really good point that, like, when I came across your organization, I found you guys online or through Instagram or something. And I really like this emphasis on sisterhood and being female oriented to create a little bit of a safer container, because I think I was a little naive when I started working with plant medicine, and thankfully I was in very good settings. But then I started hearing slowly over time, the more I got involved in the space, stories, horror stories, really, of women being taken advantage of, especially when they are in a state, in a journey. So what have you guys done as far as, like, I'm sure that has come up here or there. You mentioned some programming, like, is there education in place, or are you guys working on that to kind of maybe, one, make women more aware of, know who you're working with, know who you're sitting with, but then two, just kind of like shedding light on this a little bit more?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I have to say, to date, we haven't done a whole lot of that, but making sure that we have these containers in place. For example, in our integration circles, we basically bring up anything and everything that we want to talk about, including childhood things that happen, or, recently this happened with so-and-so and whatnot. And so I think those are really safe places for people to just bring it up, but we haven't actively been saying, oh, hey, this is what we're going to educate you on, or this is what we're going to so on and so forth. With that said, in the fall, we are looking to host I can't remember what we worded it, but something like a sexual trauma sharing circle. So that's kind of in the works. And also making sure that when people are looking for trip sitter or therapists, counselors and whatnot, like we're starting to build a network where we can refer our members to, so that they know, hey, they're vetted by us. We know them personally, and we've done work with them ourselves, perhaps. And that's why we are recommending them to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so important, because things, especially in the US, like with Oregon legalizing starting in January of next year, which is just mind blowing. And like, things are going to change really quickly. And I just don't think, I hope that psychedelic decriminalization and legalization isn't going to go the exact same route as cannabis. And just like, I live in Colorado, and I remember tourists coming out and just getting fucked up on cannabis and like calling ambulances and stuff.
Oh.
And so, gosh, I just hope that that safety is somehow a little bit more at the forefront. And I think what you guys are doing with building community and these safe spaces and integration circles is going to be such a huge part of that. I was participating in a summit a couple months ago now. And the woman who was hosting was saying that the rate at which psychedelic like popularity and people exploring this space is growing, the
Mhm.
need for integration is going to be like 10 times that. So I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit too. Um, is that primarily circles that you've created and you've sat in on? Is it mainly about integration, or are there other aspects that you guys are diving into as well?
Um, in terms of just like using psychedelics in general.
Yeah.
Mhm. I would say it's mainly about integration and
Hmm.
mainly it's just being in community, to be honest. Some of the workshops or the socials that we do have kind of nothing to do with psychedelics too. And because we truly believe in like we heal in community, right? Actually, have you heard of the rat park addiction experiment?
No,
Okay.
please tell.
So, so I can't, this is like happened way long ago, like back in the 70s or something like this. And forgive me if I'm butchering it, and I'm sure other people know it way better than I do. But essentially, there was a series of studies of drug addiction that were done, and in so basically, it's like various groups of rats, and they were given the choice between water and morphine. And one group was placed in a cage all by themselves, and it's like a super small cage by themselves, and the other one had access to like the rat park and it was like 200 times the size, and they had like other rats in there, and there was like food and playthings and all the stuff. And so group one, when they were trapped alone, they just kind of obsessively became way more addicted to the morphine until they eventually overdosed and died. And group two, they like rarely touched the morphine, and they opt to actually, play with their new friends and things like that. And so the conclusion was really not so much that the drug was causing addiction, but more of the environment, and that a happy rat has no need to get high, and like neither would like a happy human. So that was kind of the conclusion there. So, in relation to why we're having a community and why these circles are so important, it's like letting people know, hey, what you're experiencing, you're not going through that alone.
That's really powerful. Yeah, I've noticed that sitting in ceremony with other people too, like also integration circles, but even when you are taking medicine with other people, everyone affects you. Everyone affects each other, right? And so like this tending to that space and creating a foundation of safety and connection and openness and honesty and trust in those scenarios is so huge. And I love how your project kind of came out of COVID, because I think we all felt that and are still feeling it. At least in my small world, it seems like people are still, I want to get back in community, but things are weird now and there's more hostility now and the political climate, and it's like we almost need incentive, and we need groups and we need summits and things like this to really push us back into those spaces.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess one thing that I will clarify is a lot of people, not a lot, a handful of people do ask us, oh, so what do you guys do when you get together? Do you just like take medicine and dose? And like, no, 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 no. Like the amount of responsibility that puts on our shoulders to care for random strangers that come is way too much. So effectively, we are a community and platform that is all about education and advocacy. Yeah.
Yeah, good distinction. When I started my integration circle locally with a friend, we got that question. Like, we would go hang up flyers, and they're like, it sounds like you're selling mushrooms. I'm like, did you actually read this? Because that is not at all what it says. But yeah, people sometimes see what they want to see. So yeah, that explanation is helpful. And let's get into plant medicine a little bit more. So let's talk about like the classic psychedelics. When someone uses that term, because I feel like I see that a lot, I hear it a lot. What does that mean?
Right. Great question. So, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, the classic psychedelics are basically like a category or like a class of psychedelics with like the largest amount of research. and cultural influence. So there's four. It's mescaline, which is basically the cacti, peyote or San Pedro. It's LSD, also known as acid. It's the stuff that the Beatles uses to write their great hits, and people are known to microdose on in Silicon Valley for productivity and focus. And the third one is psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, and the fourth is DMT. I think the most popular one for DMT would be ayahuasca, the things that they drink down in the Amazon. And also another form of that, I would say, is 5-MeO DMT, which is, I can't remember exactly what the thing is, the poison or like the something off of like a
It's,
Sonora desert frog.
yeah. It is like the poison from their glands. Yep. I've got
Right.
a podcast on that if anyone is curious. Yes.
Yeah, I like it.
Yes. I agree with like those being kind of the main ones. Um, what I'm just like really kind of curious, is there specific research that you really like to go to when you want to learn more? Or like if you had to pick a favorite, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but like a favorite book or a favorite like website that puts out current research, what would that be?
Mm. Um, Putting out research, I would say top of my mind, John Hopkins University for sure. I think they're like probably the biggest one or one of the biggest ones to be doing a lot of clinical research on this topic, or the oldest one, I can't remember anymore. And then second one would be like MAPS or MAPS Canada, because they are doing
Mm-hmm.
the third phase of clinical studies on MDMA, and we're really hoping that with that has gone to completion, that'd be enough to allow Health Canada or the US to legalize it across the board.
Yeah, I really like maps, and they're great about posting like blurbs on Instagram whenever they have like a new study come out or analysis or something that can be helpful for people if you're listening and you just kind of want to learn more about the research side of things. So now we've covered like these classic psychedelics. So if someone wants to start working with them intentionally,
Mhm.
where would you say someone start?
You mean like a kind of like a pecking order of these medicines, or?
Right. Yeah. Obviously, we're not talking about sourcing or anything illegal like that. But if they're like, okay, I know I want to work with psychedelics on my healing journey. What
Mhm.
do I do?
Right. Um, if they're brand new to it, and they've never even say like even touched cannabis before, I would definitely say go find a therapist, like a trauma informed pro psychedelic therapist, or even a psychedelic integration coach or something like that. And this person can actually, or microdosing coach, to walk you through the whole entire thing. So I would say, kind of get the more theory based or like the practical things set first, and have somebody educate you on that before you even take care. But like kind of like the three stages of working with medicine, I would say, is preparation. So knowing all of that, somebody will teach you and guide you through it, and then you can trip. And then the integration part, which we kind of touched on before, which is, to me, it's a lifelong journey. Like once you start on this, it's like there's no stopping, because it's not only our trauma, but our ancestors' trauma, our intergenerational trauma that we're all working on.
I think that is a really important point to hit on. I've said this before in other podcasts where I've talked about psychedelics, but they are not a magic pill.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
like any other form of healing or just like working out, right? If you go to the gym once, you're probably going to feel good after, but you are not going to see this like insane transformation after one workout. So
yeah.
psychedelics are the same way. Like you might have one journey, but it might take you a year or forever. I've heard of people having one psychedelic experience and they integrate that for the rest of their life and they don't work with psychedelics anymore. Um, I
Yeah.
also know people who kind of do things the other way and they work with psychedelics frequently, but then they're also really trying to take that time and that space in solitude and, a little bit in community to integrate their own journeys. But that point of the healing comes from doing the work afterwards is like so important to emphasize. Yeah.
For sure. Totally agreed. And just a note of like, I'm definitely not against doing it recreationally. I do that sometimes, but I think like intentional use is, to me, more than just having a fun time. It's a lot about, for me, it's a lot about like personal or even spiritual development. I think all of the clinical trials and studies and research and stuff done on psychedelics right now is very much in a maybe like a biological perspective of, yes, it helps with, PTSD, right? And a bunch of stuff I can't remember anymore. PTSD, anxiety, depression, suicidation, addiction, like all that great stuff. But if you don't have that, so for somebody like myself, like the other reason why I'm doing it is a lot about just dealing with my own traumas, dealing with things that happened in my childhood that was unresolved or just popping up now, and like really just making sure, like, how can I continue to be a better person? Yeah.
And I know that was one part of Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. I think it was in this book. Or it was in his second one, This Is Your Mind on Plants, that he talked about like some of
Mhm.
the how they measured like spiritual awareness and almost spiritual
Oh yeah,
awakening and experiences. And
right.
they somewhere in one of his books they list out like all the questions of how they quantify are people having a spiritual experience. And that was so like mind-blowing to me
Yeah.
because I have always thought of that as well, like with my own work with psychedelics. But I was like, oh gosh, I guess people only research, like you said, like PTSD, depression, addiction, those like, what would you call that? Like clinical
Mhm.
diseases, I suppose. And I think of like, what about all these other benefits? There are so many that are
Yeah.
much harder to quantify, but like research is still happening on even like, are people having a quote unquote spiritual experience and how do we define that? And I think that's really cool and it helps me it definitely gives me hope for like the future and where things are going too with the research.
100%. Totally agreed with that. Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up because I remember reading the book and I was like so surprised to see, oh, they have an assessment for this. And I don't remember if you have read the questions or remember the questions, but it was very, was it like on a rating scale, on a scale of 1 to 10 or something? Oh, I forget the questions now, but they were quite like, oh, I didn't think they would ask it like this.
Yeah, I remember one of them was something like, did you have a feeling of oneness or connection or something like that? And I'm like, oh my God. So like they are getting it. They get it. The researchers get it too. Yeah. So I want to dig into those kind of three stages you mentioned, the preparation, tripping, integration a little bit more.
Yeah.
So preparation, just like an intro to how someone might prepare for a journey from your background and experience, what are a couple things you would suggest?
Sure. Just a little caveat. I am not a microdosing a psychedelic coach. Dana is actually. So if you guys are looking for that, please go over to her. But from what I've done in my own personal experience and from what I've learned from friends and, people in the industry, preparation is probably as important as the tripping itself. And so set and setting, I think most people have heard about this before, popularized by Timothy Leary back in like the 60s. So it's your set is the mindset. So how are you feeling? What's your mood and all that stuff going into it? Setting is your physical setting. So making sure that you're in a safe place or in a place that you feel safe with people that and how is the music and like is there going to be food or do you have enough water and all that type of stuff. And since then, I have actually learned to include dosage. So how much are you going to take? And who's taking what if you're doing it in a group, right? Because I think that does give you. I think dosage is actually one of the bigger factors to consider. Like, are you taking microdose? Are you doing a mini dose? Are you doing a macrodose? Are you doing like the full hero's journey? Like, what is happening here, right? Your intention. I have like a love-hate relationship with that factor. It's I most of the time I don't know what my intention is, to be honest.
Mm.
I usually go with something pretty generic to be like, if I am taking a bigger dose, it's more, show me what I need to know because I don't know what I don't know. Otherwise, it could be like, I've never done, say, ketamine before, and I just want to experience it. I'm curious, show me what it's like. And then safety, which I will kind of tie back into the set and setting too. So safety, as in your physical safety, who are you with? What place are you at? What time of day is it? Like, how do you make yourself feel safe? And do you trust the people around you that are tripping with you or with you? Um, And maybe having some precautions, like letting your friends who are not with you know, hey, I'm doing this. By this time, I should be okay. Can you give me a call and just check in on me? Or even having like a trip sitter with you so they can physically keep you from doing any harm to yourself or other people. And also your mindset. I think people, and I've told a bunch of friends this before, where it's like, if something major just happened to you and you're quite shaken up mentally or psychologically, whatever, now is not the time to be doing psychedelics. Because to me, it's like, if you can imagine like a snow globe, and like the snow is at the bottom, taking psychedelics is like shaking that up. You don't really know where it's going to land or when it's going to land. So just making sure that you emotionally, physically, mentally, emotionally, like everything is um, stable, stabilized before you take it.
Yep. And I think that's a really important part of safety too, is if you have a large trauma or you suspect maybe you have a trauma that, your brain has hidden from you, that you haven't worked with a therapist on, that you haven't done a little bit of peeling back the layers on, that's probably not a good time. Because I have heard some bad times of people having, like, especially with ayahuasca,
Uh,
of completely unresolved trauma like coming to the surface, and then not having the tools to deal with it either in the moment, or if you're in a foreign country, that can be really difficult too. So yeah, I would say it's which maybe this is even part of the preparation process. Like, I think you hit on the big major pieces, but maybe part of the preparation is also, am I doing the little things? Am I taking time to meditate or having quiet time each day? Am I doing a little bit of personal development for a period of time so that I'm kind of aware of what's going on? What is, like you said, mindset? What is my mindset like?
mhm.
I think that can be a good note of safety for sure.
Yeah. Caroline, have you done ayahuasca before?
Hmm.
Great. So then you know about like the dieta and all that stuff. So just
Yes, right.
for the
Yeah.
audience, in case they don't know, I would say ayahuasca is one of the most like strictest medicine to take, because leading up to it, let's just say like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I don't know, like they advise you, and you should take their advice on like going on like a low social media or news diet, and like making sure that you have a good self-care routine down pat with like your meditation, working out, doing yoga, eating really clean, like low sodium, low salt, low garlic, low spices and all that, and making sure that you're kind of weaning off of the red meat and eventually off the white, so that you're mostly on a veggie diet. And so there's all these things that you follow in order to, I guess, prepare your vessel to take in this medicine, because it's out of respect for the plant and for the spirit.
Hmm.
If only all of these medicines kind of require that, I think people will have a lot better experiences and better trips on it.
And I do, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I do actually recommend that to anyone. Like, I have a little preparation guide that I send to people who are curious, and I always have at least I would say three at the bare minimum. Like, even if you're sitting with mushrooms,
Mm,
have a couple days where you're detoxing, like you said, all the information, but also detoxing your food, no alcohol for sure, things like that too. I
yeah.
think go a
Sorry.
long way in your journey. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm like, I know there's a few that I'm missing. Yeah, no alcohol, no other drugs. If you're actually on no
Oh,
porn,
no
you know,
sex.
I know that one's really hard. Before and after too, I think they were suggesting. I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. Um, what was the other thing? Oh, right. If you actually do have so kind of backtracking now, when I was introduced to psychedelics for intentional use, I wanted to like, shout it to everybody, like everyone should do this. It's going to help you change your life and all that type of stuff. And then I gradually came to the realization of like, it's actually not for everyone. And I've actually talked somebody out of trying psychedelics before
Mm,
by being really real and honest. It's like, this is not a magic pill. This is what's going to happen. These are the three different stages. This is what you need to know. And like these are the possible bad things that can happen, right? If you're not
mhm.
prepared for it. And so one of the things I wanted to say is I think the jury's still kind of out on this, but like if you have bipolar disorder, if you're schizophrenic or, something similar to that, people are saying, no, this is probably not the best choice for you. But on the other hand, I also know this lady who lives in Brazil, and she's master at 5-MeO, and she's healed those people with those conditions. So I think there
Mm.
needs to be a bit more, research and all that stuff, to be done on this.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show that like it isn't for everyone. And even if you don't have those conditions, it's also, are you ready? Are you ready to, I don't know, have your brain be like completely blown open and be receiving information that you may not be ready to process?
Yeah, that's kind of a good way to put it. It's like, do you want to open this door that
The door
you
is
don't know
locked,
what's
right?
behind it? It's a little bit scary, but there's
Right?
no going back after you open it. Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to
right.
go through.
Right? Red pill, blue pill. Which one are you going to take?
Yep. So let's go to the trip itself then. Some things I specifically think that would be beneficial for us to touch on. Questions I've gotten from people is if they're like tripping by themselves, for example, and they're having a really hard time, mantras, affirmations, or what you do in that situation. I think it would be kind of cool to like tackle that side of tripping, because trip can mean, it can be so many different things with all those situations and all those aspects of preparation that you touched on. So
Yeah.
maybe we go through like the methods of support for during that trip.
Perfect. I think when you're tripping and so I guess one philosophy that people have is there's no such thing as a bad trip.
I do say that.
Right? Yeah. I think it's definitely like the medicine gives you what you need, not what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely experienced that myself personally many times. But if you are in a place where you don't want to be during one of these journeys, hopefully you do have a trip sitter with you, and they, somebody for you to talk to, somebody to guide you and just make sure, you're feeling okay. If you are alone, there is something called the Fireside Project, which is based in the US. I think they're international now. I can't remember, but it is I think it's a 1-800 number that you call, or even a text. Actually, you can text them and somebody on the other line can actually like talk with you and talk you through it. So I think that's a really great initiative for people to know.
Mm-hmm.
And also just you just kind of remember like this is not going to last forever. Like just breathe through it, do some meditation, maybe even journal it out. Um, yeah, what do I usually? I don't have a lot of bad trips. That's the thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I always have a hard time at some point. I don't think I've had a lot of bad trips, but there's always a challenge that comes up at one point or another. But what you said, like breathing, coming back to your breath, obviously is a great go-to. Mantra that a friend in Peru shared with me was, "This is a sensation, and sensations always pass." And then I was chatting with someone the other day who said they were working with ketamine and they had a really hard time letting go into the medicine and wanted to just like stay in their physical body, like, which I've done a podcast about this too, like, which was with 5-MeO of like, I need, everything needs to be perfect, just like hang in there. And what really helps me kind of let go in those situations is telling myself that this is the medicine working. When you kind of feel that, if you haven't worked with psychedelics, it's almost like you took like 6 shots of tequila real quick and they're like hitting you all at once. It's a little bit, if I had to compare it to something, it'd be something like that. And you're like, oh, what's happening now? And in those times, our ego really wants to hang on, right? And clutch at whatever is our 3D reality. But if you can just tell yourself, like, this is the medicine working, like, this is the medicine healing me, that can really help you like soften into the experience.
Yeah. Surrender to the process, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
the journey, whatever the phrase is.
Yes.
Definitely remembering that. And I haven't tried this before, but on like my 5-MeO or like my ayahuasca ceremonies, they've always told me to like bring something like an item that you can
Mm-hmm.
cherish. And when you feel like you're kind of floating too much, just like hold it in your hand, like it'll ground you because there's something solid that you're holding on to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can definitely help, like crystals and things like that, little things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like after you puke, like you kind of come down a bit.
True.
Right?
Right?
Like,
Yep.
yeah, you're coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're sitting with ayahuasca, yeah, sometimes purging is the best thing you can do. Just let it out.
Exactly.
And
And
let's
yeah.
let's talk a little bit more about integration then. We already did a little bit. What would be your like integration 101 tips?
So if you're working with a coach or a therapist, they'll definitely talk to you about that. So that's probably like the longest portion of time that you'll be with them. It's all about integration, and they'll kind of tell you, different exercises and techniques and stuff like that that you can do afterwards. That is, I guess, really tailored to the experience that you've had during your trip. For me, mine are pretty simple, I have to say. So typically, I would be doing a lot of journaling, a lot. And not only in terms of what I felt, what I experienced, what I saw during the trip, but also insights that came out of it. So, for example, on one of my acid trips, I like looked down at my arm or something, and I'm like, oh, I can see my skin. Like my skin's quite dry. And that really just signaled to me, oh, I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not nourishing myself. And one of the integration things that I continued to do afterwards is like putting lotion on my body after a shower. And because, so when you're taking psychedelics, it basically it helps you form new neural pathways. And so it's the best time for you to start a new habit. It's like habit forming. And so I was actually able to sustain that for like about 3 months afterwards. And then I was traveling again, and that kind of threw me off. But yeah, like little things like that, to be honest. I don't think there needs to be a lot of like really big major breakthroughs and like, radical changes in your life to call it a success. It's these little things that build up over time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love your idea of journaling. And even if someone is hesitant on journaling, I think it can't be understated. And especially what I like to do is like unfiltered, unedited journaling right after an experience. And then maybe the next day or 2 days after, then maybe get in my analytical mind and be like, okay, what was actually going on here? Like, I feel like the plants work through metaphors often.
Mhm.
So, what might be some metaphors here or something like that? But giving yourself first, like an unfiltered, this is what happened, and just letting it come out without analyzing, I think can let a lot more flow. So then you almost get more insights after.
Totally. Free writing is definitely um yeah, something that something good to do. Really helps that, perfectionist or, like over analytical mind just kind of like, it's okay. No one's gonna read this. This journal's for you type of a thing. There has been times where I've come out of journeys where I had to go and apologize to someone. So even like something small, but takes a lot of courage to do, it can also be part of that integration process.
Yeah. Are there any other actions, big or small, that have stood out to you that I guess have become an integration activity? Because I'm really big on that too, of picking like what's an action that can come from this so I feel like I'm really making those changes.
Right. Well, I think you'll hear a lot of people say this, but like definitely getting to my yoga practice, my meditation, making sure that I have a solid morning and evening routine set up again. Though because of my travel schedule, it's like quite hard to kind of, keep that succinct. But in the morning, waking up, going to the gym, making a healthy breakfast, pour into myself before I pour out to other people. Right. And the same thing with my wind down for the evening. It's like I'm reading maybe a chapter a night, right? I'm taking a bubble bath to wind down. No more screens after like 8 p.m. Like really simple things like that.
Evening routines are so underrated. I feel
Yeah.
like everyone talks about morning routines. Not
Yeah.
enough people talk about like taking care of yourself before bed. Yeah.
Hmm. And I think what a lot of people haven't realized is your evening routine sets you up for your morning routine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're
I'm
just
glad we're on the
like,
same page on that.
yeah, we're like big kids. Kids get like all kinds of nighttime routine stuff, Like we
Yeah,
need that too, at least a little bit.
definitely.
Cool. So, one other question that I thought it would be fun to kind of wrap up with is I kind of want to change it now, but
Okay.
what would be one of your, how about this? What would
Okay.
be one of your most rewarding lessons or teachings or takeaways from a single experience that you've had with plant medicine?
Ooh, my most rewarding. Um, I've had so many. Um, the one that comes to mind right now is my first 5-MeO DMT ceremony that I had. And I actually did it twice in that ceremony. And both times so it was in the bong. I was smoking it. And then literally as I was blowing out, my body just kind of like slumped to the ground and it just melted into the earth. And I didn't know where my body started and where the earth ended. And we became one. Right. And my mind was just like, I'm not sure what's happening. I'm seeing fractals. That's cool. Never seen those before. I can't feel my body. Yeah, but like, why is my mind still going? So I was like, so is this like inner loop and inner dialogue of like, is this ego death? No, I don't think so. How can I tell myself that it is? But I can't feel my, so like, it just kept going back and forth, back and forth. And at the end of it, I felt kind of sad because I didn't know if I achieved that or not. And it wasn't until I went home and I was doing some research on like, what is ego dissolution? What does it feel like? And all that, that then I realized, oh, that was it. And I experienced it twice. And because I was so focused on getting that end result, that I didn't even know that I had attained it. And so this type
Mm.
of worry just made me really think about, okay, where else in my life am I not celebrating the wins? Am I looking forward to like the next, mountain peak and not noticing that I've already reached this mountain? And so I think with that experience, it really did help me be like, slow down, smell the roses. It's about the journey, not the destination.
I would love if you could go a little deeper into that because, well, first off, oh my gosh, I can relate so much to my own experience. But ego death or dissolution, or I think there are a couple terms for it, is something we didn't really touch on today. But I think if anyone is researching psychedelics, they're going to come across that at some point, either like someone in a forum saying like I thought I died, or those close to death experiences I feel like are really, really common. What came up when you were looking into that and researching it a little bit more?
Um, I think like two kind of main factors there is like one, that feeling of oneness, like you are everything and everything is you. And I think that's why I couldn't feel my body. Like it just completely dissolved and I became the earth and the earth was me. And then secondly, um, I think so my grandpa passed away about like 5 years ago and we were really close and it was very sudden and, it was a whole, um, trauma to process as a family. And I think since then it really, well, that's kind of like one of the triggers why I left Canada and I traveled around the world because I realized life is short. I don't know if I'm going to go tomorrow. Why am I stuck in this life that I don't even like? And so I had already accepted death or my death at that point. And I think because I consciously and subconsciously has accepted that already, I didn't really have like a struggle while I was doing either high doses on mushrooms or like red acid or even 5-MeO, where it was just kind of instant. There was no, so from my psychotherapist friends, what they tell me is it's a really quick decision that your subconscious will make, but you can either resist the ego to death or you'll just go with it. And I think for me, there was no struggle with that. I literally just went with it. And I thought I might be in that moment of conflict, but that never happened. And so that kind of added to my confusion as well in terms of, oh, I don't know if I'm actually experiencing this, or shouldn't I be in like a limbo period where, I'm trying to, think this through in my head or something like that. Yeah.
So, probably maybe an assumption that we could make is when people are resisting those moments a little bit more is when they have those more intense, like, I thought I was dying for 5 hours when I was tripping, that sort of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I haven't really had that either. I've had much quicker, like very similar to what you said. Like I'm melting and my eyeball's over there, I think, and my body, the rest of me is like over there, but it's fine. It's like a weird sensation, but like, okay, cool. Much more like that. I've never had, sometimes you do hear some pretty intense stories of people feeling like they were really dying over and over, and maybe that is related to that sort of resistance around their own fears, which is a lot of what comes up for each of us in our journeys, right? In different ways.
100%. A quick, interesting fact that I will share. So I have a friend who serves combo. He actually was my first plant medicine giver, I guess. And he also studied shamanism. And what he told me was, yes, when you like, I guess, ingest a really high level of psychedelics, you do go to the point where you're just dying over and over and over again for what it feels like an eternity. And so if you're subconscious decides to join the upper world versus the lower world, what happens is you die from like lightning bolts or something that go through you, or like something to do with like the ethereal universe. And then when you go down, it's more like animals and stuff that would like eat you alive, or like, I don't know, try to crawl into your mouth or something like that. And for me, my ayahuasca ceremony, this only lasted for 10 minutes because at that time, I think I just had the tools for me to like deal with this type of stuff. Where basically I was lying flat on the ground in my mind's eye, and I couldn't move at all. I was like paralyzed. And I had all these creepy crawlies on my body, like tarantulas, cockroaches, giant ants, like all that crawling on me, eating my flesh, eating my body. And I was just like, wow, okay, this is really scary. I don't know what to do. It looks really real. But I wasn't feeling any of the pain. So I knew enough to be like, I'm safe. This is not real. This is just the medicine that's working, exactly what you tell yourself. And basically, by the time I had accepted the fact that my body is being eaten away and there's nothing that I can do about it, I couldn't even move or fight if I wanted to, like literally nothing. Everything just disappeared. I kind of shot up into bliss and into heaven. And that was like the remainder of my, whatever, 4 to 6 hours on ayahuasca. And
That's
yeah,
such a powerful lesson of surrender.
surrender. There you go. Yeah.
That the hardest journeys I've ever had are where I'm really fighting, where I'm really resisting. And usually like it's great when you can do it yourself in your head, or sometimes like people I've been around will help me out in a way. And once you can remind yourself, right, that you are safe, remind your nervous system that you're safe, and really let go, which is so hard for so many of us to do. But that you're so right. That is like the rocket ship to bliss, which is so true in our daily life as well, right? If we're just fighting against everything in our daily life, it sucks. It super sucks. When there's more of that acceptance and that trust, you're like happy as a clam every day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think that's a great place to wrap up. Thank you so much for sharing all this information, your experiences, your honesty. And I know you have the summit coming up. So if people want to learn more, if they want to connect with you and reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yes. So they can find us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Sisters in Psychedelics. They can visit us on our website, sistersinpsychedelics.org. If you want to see the summit agenda, because we do have quite the lineup for it, it's website/summit. And that's also where you'll find the link to get a ticket if you're in here in Vancouver, if you want to fly up to Vancouver, and the free live stream as well.
Amazing. Yeah, go check that out, everyone. Maybe next year I'll come up to Canada for it in person.
Great. Great. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. If you liked this episode, if you think someone you know could benefit from this information, please share it with them. And thank you again, Bea, for being here. Bye-bye.